Going to start at around 7. Oh, sorry about that. We're going to be starting the panel at around 7:05 just to allow everyone to be rolling in. But thank you again for everyone who is here and for those of you who are here to learn. So thank you. Hi to everyone who just joined us. As it says in the chat, we're going to be starting in a couple minutes. So please hang in there and we'll be beginning soon.
All right, we have 1 minute left until we start. Thank you all for joining. As a reminder, as it said in the chat, we'd like to ask that everyone keep their cameras off so that we can highlight the panelists and not have too much confusion over the Zoom. Thank you for complying.
It is 7:05, so we are going to begin now. Thank you all again for joining us tonight. Feminism Explained and Social Impact Movement welcome you to the Honoring South Florida's Career Caregivers panel, Feminism Explained's second annual Women's History Month panel. My name is Olivia Martin Johnson, and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Feminism Explained, as well as an intern at Social Impact Movement. For those of you who do not know, Feminism Explained is a monthly newsletter with the intent of addressing the negative connotations associated with the word feminism and aims to educate our readers on modern-day gender inequalities. Social Impact Movement is a nonprofit that builds partnerships to promote social change in Miami by highlighting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Tonight's panel is titled Honoring South Florida's Caregivers. In honor of the 2022 Women's History Month theme, Providing Healing and Promoting Hope, we aim to celebrate the contributions of women caregivers to South Florida and amplify their voices through a panel discussion highlighting their important caregiving roles, the impact of the pandemic on their work, and how to improve their working conditions. Tonight, our moderators are Madeline Lay and Rania Yusuf. Madeline Lay is a second year at the George Washington University, majoring in political science and minoring in public health and women's gender and sexuality studies. Madeline is the SDG 5 Gender Equality Ambassador for Social Impact Movement, the Public Affairs Director for GWU Leading Women of Tomorrow, and a columnist for the Feminism Explained newsletter. In 2017, Madeline founded Shrink the Gap to empower women to fight the gender pay gap through salary negotiations and interview workshops, as well as public advocacy. Next, we have Rania Yusuf, a sophomore at Gulliver Prep. She is a writer, social impact leader, and #Web3 builder. Rania's community leadership roles include serving as an instructor at CodeArt, a member of the Miami-Dade Youth Commission, the marketing manager for Feminism Explained, and an active member of the Web3 equity community. Rania has committed her life to helping educate and empower other young people about the opportunities and challenges for the second half of the 21st century. As I mentioned before, for our audience, please keep your cameras off during the panel in order to highlight the speakers throughout the event. Thank you. I will now hand it over to Madeline, who will give a more detailed explanation of the purpose of tonight's panel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all to coming for our Women's History Month event, and thank you to our panelists for joining us tonight. As Olivia said, our panel is titled Honoring South Florida Caregivers, aligning with the Women's History Month theme, Providing Healing, Promoting Hope. Caregivers such as domestic workers, home care workers, and doulas, whom are mostly women, and I'll add that domestic workers and home care workers are mostly immigrants and women of color, play a significant role in sustaining our families and our communities. During the coronavirus pandemic, an increased burden of care fell on women who engaged in paid and unpaid care work. During times of crisis, caregivers are on the front lines while sacrificing their health, keeping our families and loved ones safe and alive. In the United States, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die due to pregnancy-related causes than white women, an issue also faced by American Indian and Hispanic women. Doulas, especially Black doulas, serve as critical support systems and life-saving advocates before, during, and after the childbirth process. Despite its significance to our society, women's care work and care work performed by women of color is invisible, undervalued, underpaid, and lacks basic workplace protections. This panel aims to make women caregivers' contributions to our South Florida community known and visible, while also highlighting their organizing and the agency they have shown in advocating for the protection, respect, and dignity that women and care workers across Miami deserve. To start off our event, I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Cynthia Yu, the 10th U.S. Youth Observer to the United Nations, a program of the UNA USA. Cynthia could not presently be here with us today, but she provided us with a short video.
Hello everyone, my name is Cynthia Yu and I serve as the U.S. Youth Observer to the United Nations, a program of the UNA USA. In my role, I engage with thousands of young people on global affairs and create year-long programs to empower young people and connect them with the UN and global leaders. Today, I'm so excited to open up this wonderful conversation and event that's working and focusing on International Women's Day. This year, International Women's Day's theme is Breaking the Bias. And as the first woman to serve in this role in 3 years, I know a lot about how important gender equality is to achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Today, you're going to hear from some incredible women caregivers who have done so much to advance human rights and spearhead the UN's global goals in for their entire lives. In the past 2 years, we've seen an unprecedented level of stress and anxiety within Generation Z. Our wonderful caregivers here in the United States are empowering young people to take a better step forward and make tomorrow better than today. Thank you to everybody for coming on to tonight's call and to the caregivers who are here with us today. Wishing y'all a wonderful event.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rania Ishouf. We're about to get started with our panel, asking our panelists some awesome questions. We really do have a star lineup, but before we get into that, I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce all of them so you can get a good idea of who they are. So first we have Gabina Julian. Gabina is a domestic worker, a mother to a teenage boy, and a member leader of We Count, a membership-based organization of immigrant workers and families in South Florida. Gabina joined We Count in 2020 and currently serves on the Domestic Worker Organizing Committee, the DWOC. As a member leader, she's organizing with other domestic workers to improve workplace protections and raise labor standards in the industry. Tonight, Claudia Navarro will be translating on behalf of Gabina. Next, we have Nicky Dawkins. Nicky Dawkins is a holistic, full-circle reproductive health doula based in Miami, Florida. She's the founder of Werk Moms LLC, president of Period Miami, national community manager at Period Movement, and vice chair of Miami Diaper Bank. And finally, last but not least, we have June Barrett, who is a longtime home care worker, a queer Jamaican immigrant, and an executive board member at the Miami Workers Center and a leader in NDWA's We Dream in Black project. June has been active in speaking out about sexual assault and discrimination in the workplace, especially among care workers. June has spoken on an international platform around domestic workers organizing and about the #MeToo movement on a variety of television shows, including Full Frontal with Samantha Bee and many more. As a Dorothy Bolden Fellow, June has focused on base building in Florida, public speaking, and leading We Dream in Black programming for Black domestic workers throughout the United States. Welcome to these three panelists. We are so excited to have you here tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and let's get started with the panel. So there have been so many amazing events and projects happening this month. Can you tell us what has been your favorite part of this year's Women's History Month? We'll start with Nicky.
Oh man, that is a big question. There are so many great things that happened this month. I think for me, it was probably the postpartum packing party that we did this past weekend, which was a packing party that was for postpartum moms, including teenage moms here in Miami. And that went really well. We also did a little bit of period fun and period education at the party. So it was great. It was engaging and a really great way to talk about periods with both genders. So.
Thank you so much. That sounds great. June?
Oh my, there's so many great events that happened on March 8th. But I think the one that stand out was the mobilization that we had downtown Miami, the Miami Workers Center, in collaboration with We Count, where we came together, to organize and to highlight the plight of housing, the housing situation in South Florida. So I think of all the events that I did, that was the most important one to me.
Thank you so much. Gabina?
Sí, hola, buenas tardes. Para mí, creo que lo más bonito que he vivido en estos meses o en este poco tiempo es el estar en participar en una serie de talleres por parte de We Count para las trabajadoras del hogar, y también creo que fue muy bonito el que mi hijo, ¿verdad?, me haya acompañado. que estuviera aquí y creo que para mí el hecho de seguir aprendiendo y seguir creciendo como persona también me ayuda para dar esa información a otras mujeres, ¿verdad? Que no conocen sus derechos, ya que estos talleres dan información, ¿verdad? Para seguir creciendo como persona y pues eso es lo que creo que. Gracias.
Good afternoon. The most beautiful time and space this month has been participating in a series of trainings directed toward domestic workers, also having my son participate in those trainings, and ultimately learning and growing as a person, and being able to use and share that information with others, given that these spaces of learning are so important and so vital for our personal growth and for our community's development. Thank you.
That is awesome. You know, it just goes to show that there's so much that we can do in our greater Miami, our South Florida community. Now, moving on to the next question. In your own words, can each of you tell us about what you do and how you got involved in your line of work? We kind of told our audience, you know, what it is that you all do, but what does it mean to you? How do you describe what you do? And anybody could go, they want, it's a conversation, you know, just jump in and let's go.
Okay, so I'm gonna just jump in here. I'm a care worker. I have been a care worker for 21 years. I think 18 years of that is in Dade County. So I didn't want to do care work, right? I have a history of domestic work, but I started doing care work. Came down here to Florida, got my first care job. And while giving care to, her name was Mela, memories of my grandmother keep flashing back because you see, my grandmother was bedridden for many, many years. And so she literally died from the bed sore. She literally rot in the bed from just bed sores. And I fell in love with care work. And I started, you know, went out doing my training for care work and I started giving care. But I realized that the more I give care from, you know, not from a professional point, but also from this love, place of love and care and compassion, was the more I get disrespected by the families, was the more that my wages were stolen, was the more that I was just called the N-word and put down. And so we went through that for years and wondered, you know, why is this happening? And why isn't any safety net anywhere I could turn? But I think in 2012, for the first time, when Trayvon Martin died, someone led me to the Miami Worker Center so I could be a part of activism around Trayvon's death. And then 4 years later, I got a call from the Miami Worker Center saying that we're now going to be organizing domestic workers, care workers. And that was like news to my ears. And I got involved with the movement. We had our first domestic workers assembly. And there I realized that I wasn't alone, that there were other domestic workers who were telling their stories, bravely telling their stories. And that was it. I got involved and I started, you know, turning up to meetings, started, traveling, going to mobilizations. And that was it for me. I got involved. And then there was this, a part of domestic work where a lot of us was experiencing sexual harassment, sexual violence. And people were just afraid because it's taboo, right? And people were afraid to speak up about it. So at that South Florida assembly, I was asked to do it. I didn't really feel comfortable, but I did that. And fast forward to, the Me Too movement and a lot of how we got involved with the Me Too movement around that was that Ijen Poo was invited, which is the director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, along with some other women activists. It was 6 of them, Tanara Burke, the Me Too founder, to Hollywood, to the Oscars, right? And then that opened the door for domestic workers to speak openly about what they were experiencing behind this closed door. So I got involved because I wanted to be a part of that army of change, right? And I'm still there today. I'm still doing the work. Yes.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing. If one of our other panelists would like to answer the question now.
Sí, hola. Yo quisiera compartir un poco de cómo empecé este trabajo. Soy la mayor de 6 hermanos. A la edad de 14 años mi padre fallece y todos mis hermanos eran más pequeños que yo. Entonces yo empiezo, ¿verdad?, a hacerme responsable de mis hermanos y de mi mamá, porque ella quedó muy devastada y empecé a trabajar, ¿verdad?, limpiando casas. A la edad de 18 años me vine, 18 tuve la oportunidad de venirme a Florida y llegué aquí en el 99. Sigo limpiando casas. Gracias a ese trabajo honesto y digno, he podido ayudar a mis hermanos. 2 de ellos ahorita están en la universidad y sigo yo, ¿verdad?, trabajando desde acá. Cuando yo conocí a la organización de We Count, cuando hace poco, ¿no? Hace 2 años, me hablaron de We Count, ¿verdad? Y decidí solo meterme. No sabía que yo me iba a encontrar con mucha información. Me gusta estar acá, me gusta seguir aprendiendo para seguir empoderando, ¿verdad?, a otras mujeres, porque como yo no conocía mis derechos como trabajadora y We Count me ha informado, ¿verdad? Ahora soy miembro líder de las trabajadoras del hogar y me siento empoderada, me siento feliz, quiero seguir aprendiendo para seguir ayudando a otras mujeres y ahorita creo que para mí quiero seguir estando aquí, quiero seguir aprendiendo y quiero seguir empoderándome. Muchas gracias por escucharme.
What I would like to share is how I started working. I'm the eldest of 6, and at 14, my parent died. And I became responsible for my siblings and my mother, who was absolutely devastated. And at the time, I started working as a house cleaner. Fast forward a few years, at 18, I came to Florida and continued doing house cleaning, domestic work. And thankfully for this job, as dignified and as honorable as it is, I've been able to support myself and my siblings back home. I've been able to support 2 of them who are in the university. And then in addition to that, I joined We Count not long ago, about 2 years ago. And I initially joined because someone invited me. I didn't know much about what the organization did, but I began participating little by little. And We Count has helped inform me, has helped empower me, teach me what my rights are. And now I am a member leader of the Domestic Worker Organizing Committee. And I ultimately want to keep participating. I want to keep pushing. I want to keep learning. And I want to keep helping educate other domestic workers on their rights. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Oh man, the story of how I guess. First of all, June, I just want to say thank you for sharing the story about your grandmother. My grandmother, I'm also Jamaican. My grandmother also passed of the exact same scenario. So thank you for sharing that. That was, yeah, a little bit. But also she was part of the reason why I'm in this field. She was a health teacher. And so I was very fortunate to kind of learn about my body from somebody who had, the knowledge of that. And that kind of started my journey into just loving reproductive health and periods and just the body in general. So I have always kind of been that person to my friends. And then I kind of learned more about what a doula was after having one of my own. And so I decided that's something that I wanted to do. In the process of training for that, I started Werk at Moms, which was a community for basically mompreneurs and working moms, because at the time I didn't really have a space where I could go with my baby and learn or attend an event. I was worried about, oh my gosh, what if he cries? I need to breastfeed him. I don't want to disturb anyone else in this space. And there was really no place for that. And I found there was other moms like me. And so I created that space in partnership with Capital One. And we had the Mompreneur Brunch and Learns where moms could come and breastfeed and have brunch and bring their babies and feel comfortable and learn how to launch a business. So after I finished my doula training, I decided to merge those two things together. And I also launched Period Miami, which collects menstrual hygiene products for people who menstruate in need. So with that, I attached it to Werk at Moms and did the postpartum period project, because people don't think about postpartum. You bleed after having a baby for a little bit and you do need pads. And there are some women who have babies and then have to go right back to work or don't have supplies for that. So I really wanted to kind of highlight that with my work at Period. But in being a doula, it's just such, and if anyone doesn't know what a doula is, we support birthing people through pregnancy and labor and postpartum. There's all kinds of doulas across the spectrum. I cover everything, but there's loss doulas, there's abortion doulas, there's death doulas. Basically, that's what we do, is we provide emotional and physical support, and we also advocate for the wishes of our clients. But the work is incredibly rewarding, but it also has a lot of obstacles and can be, it can be just as hard as it is rewarding. But I do have a lot of passion for the reproductive health space and maternal health space in general. And that's why I continue to do this over 5 years later.
Thank you all for sharing your experiences. Along with the paid work that you do, I think a lot of people forget that the advocacy and organizing that you all do is also care work. So thank you all for your contributions to our community. So the coronavirus pandemic has impacted all of our lives. How has the coronavirus pandemic impacted your work?
I mean, I could start on this one if that's okay. I know I just spoke, but I think for doulas in particular, it has heavily impacted our work, especially because a lot of our work is in the hospital birthing with moms, and we have been completely outside of the hospital. We're considered visitors. We're not considered staff. We're not considered part of the family or the birthing team. So that has been incredibly challenging. And we have tried to come up with all sorts of ways to get in there, but it's just been very difficult with the pandemic and the restrictions. Unfortunately, in the beginning, a lot of people were birthing alone, even without their partner, or if they tested COVID positive, they would have to birth alone or without their partner. That has changed. We've been able to do virtual support, or sometimes the partner will have to leave and we have to come in, which is unfortunate. So it's been really, really challenging, but I hope, it's getting better now. And I just kind of hope it continues to be that way. And eventually we can not be considered as visitors and actually part of the birth team. Yeah.
Sí, continúo. Sí, yo creo que a mí en donde me ha afectado más es en lo emocional. Claro, también en lo económico, porque se hubo, ¿verdad? Muchas veces en que no iba a trabajar, y me causaba estrés porque no me alcanzaba para pagar la renta. Y también creo que en el estar aislado afectó mucho. Yo soy madre soltera con un hijo. Afectó el hecho de estar encerrados, ¿verdad? De que él no fuera a la escuela. Y también yo, ¿verdad? De que estuviera en el trabajo y dejarlo todo el día en casa. Para mí, me causaba, creo que estrés, ansiedad, tristeza, ¿verdad? De no poder estar con él. Y creo que también a mí, pues, no me he contagiado, pero a mi hijo sí le dio el COVID. Y creo que más en eso, ¿verdad? En lo emocional me afectó. Así que gracias.
For me, it's affected me more emotionally than anything else. Of course, economically, it affected me not being able to work, having to choose to stay home, and not being able to pay my rent many times. In addition, the isolation as a single mother to a teenage boy, having my son not be able to go to school, and then many times having to make the decision to go to work and feeling even when I left for work, the experience of the guilt and the anguish of leaving my son home alone throughout this. And, you know, I myself didn't experience at the moment, right? Haven't caught COVID, but my son did get sick, right? And so dealing with all of that, I think ultimately for me, it's been isolating and emotionally heavy experience.
Yes. How do I answer that question? At the beginning of the pandemic, I can answer that question from at that time, I was a full-time fellow with the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And at the beginning of the pandemic, her work started by having calls from domestic workers, and it was calls from across the country. A lot of domestic workers lost their jobs at the beginning of the pandemic, here also in South Florida. And at that time, her director and deputy director, they came together, we all came together, and, you know, we were wondering, you know, what can we do to help workers? And we started the coronavirus fund, and we raised a couple of $1 million, and we were able to send, it was $400 to care workers, send money to our affiliates. And I personally work in this bedroom from morning until midnight, trying to get workers, you know, our direct workers to resources. And one of the things that was happening to workers was that workers were being forced, it was a paycheck or leaving our families behind for the time being and living in with our employers, right? And a lot of workers did that, right? There were workers who were told, okay, we're gonna take you to her vacation home just for a month, and they ended up spending more than a month. So what happened and what we saw during this pandemic was a lot of wage theft, right? And a lot of people do not talk about the fact that there were many domestic workers who died, because people forget that, you know, that domestic workers, we are always first responders, right? No matter what happens, we turn up to work. So we lost a lot of caregivers. We did have a memorial for these caregivers. And one of the most brilliant things that happened during the pandemic was that we started to organize differently, and we were able to connect to workers across the country in every corner that you can think of, right? We were able to connect with workers. We were able to partner with other organizations and lead folks to mutual aids and so on, where they could get, you know, mutual aids. And also, you know, we were able to, on the We Dream in Black program, you know, we were able to, you know, as I said, to expand and to have circles across the country where women could, it wasn't just about circles, there were healing circles, right? And digitally, we were able to have our own healing circle because domestic workers were hurting. And we partnered with the IPS where we did a survey here in South Florida, in New York and Massachusetts, right? And we were able to get, you know, a first-hand look at what workers were experiencing and what they were going through, right? So that was some of the work that I did. And my own twin sister, who is a domestic worker, she was forced to live in, and she's still living in and being robbed right now of her wages. And that's why it's so crucial right now that we are fighting, you know, to end wage theft here in South Florida. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing about how COVID has really impacted your line of work. You all make a really interesting point, which is that there's a real human cost to the pandemic and to this line of work in general. So for this next question, we'd like to know, what are some of the mental health impacts that you've experienced personally? What is the toll you feel that all of this takes on you? And how do you try to cope with that stress, pressure, and more?
Yes, I'm gonna go again. For me, as I listened to Gabina, I hope I'm calling her name correctly. As I listened to her speaking, I got very emotional when she spoke about having to leave her son and the guilt that she, you know, she felt at that time. And that a lot of the workers that we surveyed, right, they were experiencing some of the same emotion that she spoke about. And for me, like for us working closely with the workers, I remembered working with a group of Garifuna women down here that we surveyed, and they literally had no food, right? And what they had to do was to pool whatever food. This was happening in real time. We have to remember domestic workers were losing their housing, still is losing housing, you know, and you as a domestic worker, for and foremost, it took a toll. And that's why we had the digital women's circles and domestic workers, you know, were coming to them. It did take a toll on organizers. I experienced emotional burnout because constantly listening and you know, women, they were suffering with their babies. We forget that this was their line of work, right? And it was taken away from them. And if it wasn't taken away from them, they were losing wages, right? And to listen to the stories of the women, it was very emotional, very painful. And it took a toll not just on me, but a lot of the organizers and the domestic workers themselves.
Thank you for taking that moment to be vulnerable with us, and, you know, really share that toll, that cost, that effect that was had on you. Nicky, Gabina, do either of y'all want to jump in and share as well?
I can go, or Gabina, you can go if you'd like. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the mental health that I, you know, for my clients, you know, first, I'll talk about that, is just, I mean, it's tremendous. The loss of work is a big deal when you're bringing a child into the world. It's, you know, the finance, the stress of that puts a lot on a pregnant person. I have definitely seen more, I guess, emergencies, more C-sections, more stress, more preeclampsia, more, you know, things like complications basically than I ever have before during the pandemic. And I do feel the mental health and stress has a lot to do with that. In addition to just the lack of not being able to physically go anywhere and do as many things as you would like to. I can say for me personally, it has definitely been very, very tough. In 2020, my best friend and business mentor was murdered. She was gunned down in front of her home. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Her 3 children were inside. I was about, I'm gonna try not to cry. I was about 3 months pregnant at the time. She was supposed to be my doula. So I experienced that, you know, pregnancy, mental health, and after that. And I had to also support her clients as well along the way who lost her. So I can definitely say it's had a big impact for me on my work. I am an advocate for maternal mental health. I advocate every year for this because I think it is incredibly important and extremely overlooked. There's not a lot of support for moms in this area. People don't know what to look for, and providers are not equipped to handle it. They don't have the resources that they need to get the moms the help that they need. Unfortunately, we're kind of in this space where I think everyone is kind of trying to heal themselves with sage and crystals. And sometimes you need real help. You need a medical professional to assess you and help you through this journey. It is important. I've had moms also who experience loss. I do work in loss. And I can tell you recently, I had a client who lost her baby at 37 weeks. It was a stillborn, which is a very difficult process in birth for a mom to go through. And she had almost no support from her insurance, no support from her OB for helping her through that after the maternal health part of it, nothing. All of those referrals came from me, her doula. And fortunately, because I live in this space, I knew what to do. But I think that it's a shame that people are not equipped to help people with this who work in these spaces like we do as caregivers. We need more support to help our clients with this because it is a real thing. I've experienced it, I can tell you. And I see my clients go through it, and it's upsetting that there's not more resources in Florida for this. So I'm a huge advocate for this. If anybody wants to get involved in that, please contact me or has a story they want to share or talk about. Also, sometimes this comes from violence in the birth spaces that happen here in Florida. Unfortunately, Florida has an extremely high sex rate that cause a lot of birth trauma for a lot of moms. A lot of those are unnecessary, and I'm talking high, like 55%. Or more. The national average is around 30, 32. That's really bad. So all these things just need to be looked at better. And I'm really glad that you guys brought up the topic of maternal health during this call for caregivers and for us, because we need it too. We hold a lot of emotional space for people. And I think they say sometimes we're like the worst at self-care for ourselves. So that activism burnout, like June mentioned, is a real thing. It takes a lot of pressure. It takes a lot of time, and it causes a lot of stress. And so we need relief for that as well. And I think hosting things like this is really, really nice. And I appreciate you guys giving us the space to be vulnerable and talk about this.
Gracias por todo lo que han compartido y es tremendo, ¿verdad? Yo creo que no nada más soy yo a la que le ha impactado esta pandemia. Yo creo que son muchas las personas, muchas pérdidas, ¿verdad? Que ha pasado. En lo personal, quiero comentar una anécdota, una historia, ¿verdad? Que yo pasé a mitad de la pandemia. Tuve que hacer la decisión de ir a limpiar a una casa donde una persona estaba contagiada. En ese momento, lo que sentí fue miedo porque a la vez no quería, pero a la vez necesitaba el dinero para seguir pagando las cuentas, ¿no? Entonces, pues decidí ir. Yo creo que una de las cosas que a mí me ha ayudado es el creer mucho en Dios y el que me haya puesto en las manos, ¿verdad? Y de Él, pude afrontar todo eso. Hasta ahorita que las escucho, yo misma me pregunto, ¿y cómo le hice para afrontar y seguir afrontando? Hasta ahora sigo siendo la responsable de mi hijo, ¿verdad? De 15 años. Y creo que afronto las situaciones, pues así, yo creo que como todos, ¿no? Con esa esperanza de que aún vienen tiempos mejores, de que de que aún hay más, de que no estoy sola, de que hay muchas personas que ayudan. Y creo que aún a pesar de que ha sido difícil, ¿verdad? Como lo mencioné hace un rato, ha sido difícil porque emocionalmente sí se siente el decaimiento, sí he sentido esa presión, ese estrés, pero creo que hay algo más, ¿verdad? Que me levanta para seguir. Y creo que el motivo más grande que tengo es mi hijo. Así que, pues sigo luchando, no nada más para mí, para mi hijo, ahora me abro, ¿verdad? Para ayudar a otras personas, no nada más para nosotros. Gracias. Gracias por escucharme.
Thank you so much for everything that's been shared so far. I know that in this pandemic, it hasn't just been me, and that there's been just so much loss that has happened throughout the pandemic. I want to share an anecdote, a story about something that happened midway through the pandemic, and that's that I had the decision, and I made the decision to clean someone's home that was infected, right? And in many ways, I battled against what was the right decision to do, faced with economic uncertainty and needing to pay bills. And so ultimately, I decided to go, and I think to myself that it's my faith in God that has been the most helpful and grounding. And I think even in this conversation and hearing you all, I still wonder how I was able to make it through all the ups and downs of the pandemic. And I also think that it's the hope and the faith that there are better times ahead, and that I'm not alone in experiencing what I'm experiencing. And even though it's been difficult and I felt the pressure and the weight on me, right? Knowing that I have a 15-year-old son that I'm still supporting, he has been my biggest strength, my biggest source of strength. And even now, as we continue to move through the pandemic, it's opening up myself and my experiences to other domestic workers where we can share all together and continue creating community in that way. And I just wanted to share that. And again, thank you for this space and for hearing me.
Thank you. You all just expressed that along with the physical and strenuous labor involved in care work, it involves a tremendous amount of emotional labor. And aside from the support systems that you all create for yourselves, it is clear that Miami needs to provide a stronger support system for care workers to deal with these emotional and health impacts. The next question that we would love for you to answer is, what does this year's Women's History Month theme, providing healing, promoting hope, mean to you?
Yes. Let me start with, can you all hear me? Yes. So I'm going to start about hope. Hope. Right now, at the Miami Worker Center, where we are organizing workers, tenants, and families towards dignity, power, and self-determination. The domestic workers movement, which is a national movement who has been organizing for years for basic protections, right? We have basically no protections, if maybe very that under the labor laws. So as moving into hope, my hope is that here, let us begin at home. And everyone who is on this call and who is connected to South Florida, we have been fighting, oh my God, for how many years to get a local human rights ordinance law passed. I've been there, I've given my testimony in tears, right? And to date, It did not happen. It is in the process right now. We went back and we have, you know, our brilliant friends from We Count who is with us, collaborating with us. We are asking for a basic, and we were denied. So hope a change will come, our lives. Because you see, when we go behind closed doors, it's just us and them. There's no HR, there's no middleman. The national Werk right now is trying to get a national domestic bill of rights. In 9 cities, 9 states and 1 city, there is a bill of rights that provides some protection. You know, here we have nothing. And I'm challenging everyone here tonight who is here with us. We need your help. We need your help. We need your help. And we are holding on to that hope that you will join us, join We Count, join the Miami Worker Center. We're having a big mobilization for May Day. And this is what we are challenging you. Come out, be with us, stand with us, able to fight, to protect us. Women are still experiencing sexual harassment, even with Me Too. And they're afraid to come forward because why? It's them over us. There's this huge power dynamics. Women are still being told. That's what I know is happening, right? And we don't know why we can't get that pass, you know, combating discrimination. So we are still not protected. And why are we not protected? We are professionals. We care for your children. We care for your parents with Alzheimer's. So my hope is that tonight, whoever is here, you will hear our cry and you will join forces with us to fight for that. And what's the other question? So I did hope first, because my heart was bursting. What else? Healing.
And promoting hope.
So that's promoting the hope. The healing.
Yeah, providing healing and promoting hope.
So the healing is that, like Gabina and Nicky, who touched me to tears tonight, I'm hoping against all hope that, you know, we will have more webinars like this one where we can come together. For me, I'm so honored to be here. It's a form of healing to hear Gabina's story and to hear Nikki's story. I'm not alone. We are not alone, right? So for me, that's healing, right? And we can take back some of this healing energy back to my women's circle and back to the center. So that's that. Yes.
Thank you so much, June. I'll echo what you said. Everyone in this room needs to come together and mobilize to fight for a domestic workers' bill of rights because they deserve the same dignity and protection that other workers get. So thank you so much, June.
Pleasure.
Sí, como lo dijo, gracias por este espacio, porque para mí creo que también es una manera de levantar mi voz, de sentir esperanza y asimismo transmitir esperanza a las demás, ¿verdad? Para mí, una manera de transmitir esperanza es estando aquí, ser parte de We Count, ser miembro de We Count, ¿verdad? Y compartir con otras mujeres el hecho de conocer nuestros derechos. Para mí eso es esperanza, ¿verdad? El que yo no había, no tenía el conocimiento de lo que son mis derechos, ¿verdad? Como trabajadora, y que hoy sé que merecemos ese respeto, y para mí ese respeto como trabajadora del hogar, y no nada más para mí. Yo creo que es para todas mis compañeras, ¿verdad? Que estamos en unos talleres cada domingo, en donde aprendemos, ¿verdad? Y nos ponemos a compartir para cada una de ellas, que es el respeto, ¿verdad? Y llegamos al acuerdo de que el respeto es esos salarios justos, tener espacios de comidas y descanso, y proveer herramientas para poder trabajar. Entonces, para mí, el compartir esos conocimientos es esperanza, ¿no? Y también nosotros estamos organizándonos para ir a la marcha también del 1 de mayo con Miami Worker Center. Y bueno, yo creo que para mí eso es promover esperanza. Gracias.
Okay. Thank you for this space and for what's been shared earlier. I think ultimately promoting hope is a way to lift my voice and to feel hope and to be able to share hope. And being a part of We Count and sharing my experiences with other women and being in shared spaces, to me, that is hope. And before joining, I didn't know what my rights were. And through this process and learning about what it is that I deserve and that I deserve more, right? And here we've been participating in a series of workshops that happen on Sundays. And through these workshops, sharing our experiences as a group and ultimately asking ourselves, what is respect? What does it mean to have respect on the job? And we've shared together that means to us having rest breaks, having time to eat, right? Being respected on the job and having dignified working conditions. And I think ultimately through those spaces, we've been able to share experiences. And you know, as June shared, you know, getting really excited about the May Day, May 1st mobilizations and getting folks excited about that, that's promoting and sharing hope for me.
Would you mind saying the question one more time?
Yes, of course. What does this year's Women's History Month theme, providing healing, promoting hope, mean to you?
Sorry, my son is very loud. So for the healing aspect of that, I feel like as a doula, that's just part of our work. We do have to walk moms through a very sacred and precious time in their life. So I think promoting that part of it is really important, and to talk about the healing that you need to do postpartum, and you know, the healing that I feel like we all kind of need to do at this time. I mean, it's been a very stressful time for everyone, I think, and I think that we all kind of need to heal. And so I would like to just encourage everyone to give yourself grace and do that. It's okay to take a little time away just for yourself. It's okay to turn off your phone. It's okay to say no. You know, I feel like we live in a space where we have to, you know, do this never not working thing, and it's actually really dangerous for our mental health. And so, you know, that would be how I would love for everyone to try and promote healing this year, is just to give yourself a break, turn it off, get off social media, do something outside. Especially now, things are opening up, so get out there if you can. For the hope part, I feel like when you work in the space of advocacy and caregiving, it can be really easy to actually lose hope in the things that we work so hard on. I know there are certain bills and things that I've worked on for years that I just feel are never going to pass or never going to happen. And it can feel like, you know, why? But along the way, there are small changes and things that do happen. And I think it's really important that you celebrate those wins as they come along, so you can get to the next one and not, because I know as activists, I feel like we can be really hard on ourselves whenever we can't get something done, because we live in the problem every day. So, you know, I encourage you to just celebrate the small wins that you have and to keep spreading the message to everyone. Like the May Day, I want more information so I can join, please. And again, just use your voice and talk to your families, talk to your community. Tell people about doulas, please, so we can do more work. You know, now doulas are covered by most Medicaid plans, which is great. A lot of people don't know that, so spread the word because we can get help out to more people. So just start in your community, you know, spread healing and hope that way.
Wow, what powerful interpretations of this year's Women's History Month theme. Thank you all for sharing that. You know, you all kind of shared, you know, what changes you want to see in this space. But we'd like to ask that you elaborate a little bit more and also tell us, you know, what kind of future are you looking to build in the caregiving space? What are your hopes for the next generation of caregivers? So if we could do that. Thank you.
Could you run the question one more time, please?
Oh yeah, of course. Question is, what kind of future are you looking to build for the next generation of caregivers?
For the next generation of caregivers.
Yes.
You know, the history of domestic workers have been organizing for decades, right? And when we look back at the work that they were doing, right? For example, the great Dorothy Bolden, Melania Cass, Dr. Melania Cass from Boston, Dorothy Bolden from Atlanta, Georgia, and the washerwoman of 1881, earliest organizing. They were fighting for this fast forward for us, right? So we live off that legacy. But what I would like to see, you know, because I'm aging now, you know, you know, we're going out of this work, is that we leave a strong legacy behind. We're a care worker. Care work is valued. Care workers are valued. Care workers get the protections on the labor laws that they deserve, that they get paid sick days, that they can take vacations, that, you know, they will not have their wages stolen. And by the way, those of you who are here, Florida is the #1 state, right, here in Dade County when it comes to wage theft, right? So that's why we are fighting, you know, my friends from We Count and myself and hundreds of us from South Florida across the country, we are fighting to change laws, right? To get the Bill of Rights, right? And as I said, the National Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, we're going to reintroduce the bill. It was introduced by Jayapal and then now VP, our current VP, I'm sorry, Kamala Harris. They both introduced the bill I think it was in 2018. And we are going to be reintroducing the bill again. And that's why we are constantly fighting. We mobilized and organized around the Be Heard Act. We were in the White House, domestic workers, minutes before that bill passed the House. And we're still working on that. That is tireless work that we're doing, right? To make sure that because, you know, as I said to people, there is a scripture that said, while the earth remained, I think, there'll be seed time and harvest time and day and night, right? And summer and winter, it will not cease. While the earth remained and human beings are here, there's always going to be the need for care workers, right? Whether it's nannying or taking care of the elder, there's always going to be a need. And we don't want the generation that is coming to fall in this mess that we are in right now, the way that we are treated with disregard and disrespect. So we are changing that, and we're using, you know, we're doing what we call a policy change, right? And so So that's about it. That legacy that I would like to leave behind is that no caregiver should be sexually harassed on their job, should experience wage theft, should not be called the N-word. Yeah, we are still being called the N-word and, you know, saying really horrific things too. The legacy I want to leave behind is that we will be seen as professionals giving care, right? Cleaning people's homes, right? You know, cooking people's food. We want to be respected. And I know that as I'm at the end of this race almost, but when I pass the baton to the generation that is coming, I know that it will be a better and a brighter tomorrow for the domestic work industry.
That was so beautiful and profound. Thank you for sharing that. It's also like to mention, it's like just really refreshing to hear, you know, the thought your all thoughts, your perspectives on all of these things, you know, from people who are actually out there doing the work. If one of our other panelists would like to answer the question, I know it's been a minute, so again, the question was, what kind of future are you hoping to build for the next generation of caregivers?
I'll go. I know for me, particularly doulas, I would really love to see doulas just be more accepted in the medical world. And again, just be a part of that birth team. From the menstrual equity standpoint, I would love to see period supplies be provided in schools and public places. I would also love to see it as a part of EBT, SNAP, WIC programs as well. Let's get diapers and wipes on that, please. Those are things that I would really like to see happen. I'd also just love to see an increase in just general body literacy for our youth. I think that everything starts with that. Having that knowledge about your body and knowing what to do, I think is super important. And something that I would really like to see change, especially in Florida. It's really not happening here. And then in addition to that, I would also love to see more programs that also help people be better caregivers themselves. You know, having a family member be able to be your doula support or help you as a caregiver. I think that that's super important. I recently had a doula sister who trained a 12-year-old girl to support her mother as she birthed her brother, which I think is just amazing. Being able to experience something like that so young, or even just having the option, I think is just incredible. And I would just love to see more people get familiar with our work and understand what we do. And like June said, just be more respected for what we do, because we definitely are not right now. Getting better, but it could be better. So that's something that I would love to see for future birth workers in Florida and the world, really.
Bueno, para mí me gustaría, sé que hay un camino largo por recorrer, pero a mí me gustaría que fuéramos valoradas y que hubiera, como lo mencioné hace rato, que haya esos salarios justos, también el que tengamos esos horarios de comida y descanso. También nos gustaría, ¿verdad?, que tengamos algún seguro médico, es lo que estamos hablando, y que tengamos herramientas seguras para trabajar, como por ejemplo guantes y cubrebocas profesionales, ¿verdad? Como ahora está lo de la pandemia, y también no solamente por eso, sino también por los químicos, ¿verdad? Con lo que hacemos la limpieza. Sé que no es fácil, pero creo que sí puede haber algo mejor para nosotras, ¿verdad? El hecho de que pidamos ese respeto, ese valor para todas nosotras, ¿no? Y como como trabajadoras del hogar que estamos en esta industria de la limpieza. Así que gracias.
For me, I'd like to share that I know that there's a long road ahead for us to walk. And I think ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, having just wages, right? Having times to rest at work, time to be able to eat. And I think ultimately in conversations that we've had, for us to have health insurance, right? And also to have protections for health and safety equipment, gloves and professional grade masks, not just as we've seen because of the pandemic, right? But because of how we deal with chemical and chemical exposure. And ultimately, I believe that there's a better future for us in which we live and work dignified. And yeah, thank you for the space to share.
Thank you all for sharing all of this. That was our last question for tonight. We thank you all for your work, your time, your service to our community. Just really great overall, and for creating a space where we can talk about these issues openly. So thank you so much. Now we are transitioning to some of our closing remarks.
I'd now like to introduce you to Claudia Akel. Claudia is a social innovator and an SDG ecosystem builder, passionate about working with agents for change. She is a dynamic and driven entrepreneur focused on social impact with a history of strategic business development in the for-profit and nonprofit industries. As a multilingual leader, she uses her expertise to raise awareness, educate, and inspire individuals and organizations to take action on issues related to social justice, economic progress, and environmental change. Claudia is the founder and CEO of Social Impact Movement, a co-founder at SDG Investors, a founding member and co-chair of the Catalyst 2030 US chapter, and a member of the board of directors at Accountable Impact and at the United Nations Association Miami chapter.
Thank you, Madeline. It's my pleasure to be here. I mean, I feel that I just learned so much by this panel and by the content that was sharing today. Our work at Social Impact Movement is what you have seen today, is to highlight voices of people that are doing amazing work, are the true change makers of our history, of our times. I want to highlight today the participation of Nicky Dawkins, Gabina Julian, and June Barrett for exposing their information to us, for sharing their hope with us, for highlighting the needs that our society need to address. Because from the points that I took of this meeting, I would say not enough resources, challenging times while organizing the workers, facing the inequalities by using braveness, moving into hope and sharing hope, asking for the basic and being denied. Moving one's right is hope. So I thank you all. I thank Olivia, Rania, and Madeline for being such a brave women in organizing this panel. I hope that we can highlight what has been said today. I took notes, as I told you. And I would say, if you are okay, I would like to start like an action plan where we can keep this conversation more highlighted and more visible through the social media channels. So I will give you the space and the alternatives, and we will join. use our social medias for that, and count on us, on our board and our staff and our volunteers. We're here to support you. You're not alone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. And with that, before we close, I would like to make some ending remarks and to express my gratitude for everyone who made tonight possible. First and foremost, I'd like to give my greatest thanks to the panelists here tonight. Your insight on this complex topic is extremely important to highlight and to discuss. If we want to create solutions, we need to alert people about the problem. After our discussion tonight, I hope what we can take away is more knowledge on caregiving and a desire to help and stay involved in the community. Thank you not only for sharing your experience with us, but thank you for your work, for the work you do and what you continue to advocate on behalf of. The world needs caregivers, especially in such uncertain times. And therefore, we thank you and continue to advocate with you. Thank you also to Cynthia Yu for the keynote address tonight. Although she could not join us, she wanted to contribute to the cause. Now I would like to thank the moderators, Madeline and Rania, for their amazing performance, keeping us all entertained with such thought-provoking questions and positive attitudes. I'd like to continue by thanking them, as well as the rest of the Feminism Explained team, for all the work they put into tonight's panel, as well as for the overall growth of Feminism Explained. I would like to highlight Madeline for working tirelessly on every and all arrangements of tonight's event and bringing such a passion for the theme. Next, I would like to thank Social Impact Movement and Claudia for helping make tonight possible, for your support and guidance through the formation of the event, to demonstrating a strong desire to get the word out to as many people as possible. I want to thank my family, my parents, and of course my mom for continued love and support throughout my endeavors, always pushing me to reach my hopes, dreams, and goals. And lastly, I would like to give a big thanks for the audience for joining us tonight. You showed up because you wanted to learn, understand firsthand, and hear from professionals. And after our time together, I hope and believe that you got more than you could imagine. You all made this possible by being here and being ready to take on the world with this new knowledge and desire for positive change. My hope for tonight was to plant a seed for everyone listening. The mission of Feminism Explained from the beginning has been education, as we believe that in order to make change, one must be educated about the issue at hand. I hope that learning tonight will now create a yearning to be that change. We encourage you to stay involved in the community and have provided some links in the chat in order for you to do just that. Thank you again for everyone for being here. This concludes our panel. Have a nice evening.
Thank you all so much.